There's a message, not written in ink, not spoken in words, but etched into your spirit. You've felt it your entire life. In the silence, in the storms, in the strange timing of events, and no one around you could explain it. Because it wasn't meant for them. It was meant for you. But here's the truth. Only the few are equipped to decode it. The rest. They see noise. But you're about to see the divine pattern. Clearly, spiritually, unmistakably. You've always felt like something was off about the world around you. Like you were seeing behind the curtain before you were even supposed to. Everyone else seemed comfortable, content with the surface. But your spirit kept tugging at you, whispering that there was more beneath it all. More than the routine. More than the expectations. More than the rules handed down by people disconnected from God's voice. You didn't ask to be different, but you were marked from the start. That's the first sign. Those who are chosen to decode the divine message don't choose the assignment. The assignment chooses them. And that's why, from a young age, you were set apart. You didn't fit in. You couldn't explain why certain environments drained you, why certain people felt fake even when they smiled, or why some places made your spirit tighten even when everything looked normal. You weren't imagining it. Your soul was tuned into a frequency few could hear. Most people spend their lives interpreting reality through logic, through senses, through what they can explain. But the spiritually guided, they operate on something deeper. They move with faith before evidence. They hear direction in silence. They pick up on the shift in the room before a word is said. Because they are decoding reality through the divine, not through the mind, but through the spirit. God hides his deepest messages in plain sight, but cloaked in mystery. Why? Because not everyone can be trusted with revelation. Revelation shifts power. Revelation disrupts the system. Revelation unlocks identity. And once you know who you really are in God, you're no longer controllable. So God wraps his highest instructions in symbols, in nudges, in numbers, in patterns, in dreams, and only the few who walk by spirit and not by sight can decode them. You may not have realized it, but those strange dreams you had that seemed like nonsense, they were encrypted instructions. That moment you felt like leaving a place for no reason, only to find out later something tragic happened there. That was a divine prompt. That day you couldn't stop seeing the same number over and over. 333, 1111, 717. That wasn't coincidence. That was God pointing your spirit to alignment. But here's the part that separates the few from the rest. Obedience. You can't decode the divine unless you're willing to move when you don't fully understand. The spiritually guided don't wait for clarity to obey. They obey and receive clarity after. Because faith always precedes the fulfillment. You were never meant to understand God through logic alone. If logic could grasp the infinite, we wouldn't need faith. But faith is the spiritual key that unlocks divine sight. And those who walk by spirit often appear foolish to those who walk by flesh. The world will say, "Why are you leaving that job? That's a great opportunity." But your spirit says, "It's not your assignment." They'll say, "Why are you moving again? You don't even know anyone there." But your soul whispers, "That's your next divine location." They'll say, "Why are you isolating? You need people around you." But the divine says, "Come away so I can speak clearly." Only the few can decode that kind of movement. It takes spiritual maturity to trust direction without full detail. It takes discernment to know what's divine and what's distraction. It takes silence to hear the still, small voice in the noise of this world. But if you're still watching this, you're one of the few, not because you're perfect, but because you're listening. And heaven doesn't need perfection. It needs obedience. It needs a willing vessel, someone who can feel the pull of the unseen and still say yes. You've probably already been tested in this. You've felt the weight of knowing something others couldn't feel. You've been in rooms where you felt the energy shift, even though no one said anything. You've walked away from places or people, not because anything happened, but because your spirit wouldn't let you stay. That's spiritual guidance. The world calls it overthinking, but you know it's over-discerning. God's voice doesn't always come through thunder. Sometimes it's in the subtle, the whisper, the random person who says the exact phrase you just prayed about, the song lyric that hits your spirit harder than the beat, the delayed flight that saved you from the wrong alignment, the breakup that cracked your heart only to protect your destiny. And unless your spirit is awake, you'll miss it all. That's why most don't decode the message. They're too distracted, too numb, too busy proving something to people who were never assigned to them. But you were disrupted on purpose. God allowed the discomfort so you'd seek Him. Your isolation wasn't punishment, it was positioning. Your loss wasn't failure, it was redirection. Your restlessness wasn't random, it was the divine alarm clock ringing. Because the spiritually guided are often awakened by discomfort. That ache you feel, that longing, that divine dissatisfaction. It's because your soul remembers what your mind forgot. You're not here to conform. You're here to remember, to decode, to align, and to walk as a living message in a world that's forgotten the language of the Spirit. And the reason only a few can decode God's message is because decoding takes stillness. And this world doesn't reward stillness. It rewards speed. But in silence, your spirit starts to remember. The veil lifts, and you begin to see beyond what's visible. God doesn't always give explanations. Sometimes He gives instructions, and only those who are spiritually mature know the difference. The ones who don't need to know why. They just know who is speaking. That's trust. That's alignment. You've been tested, not to destroy you, but to refine your sensitivity. Because when you're spiritually guided, your ears aren't just hearing sound. They're listening for the voice behind the voice. You catch energy shifts, tones, patterns. That's a gift. Sometimes God pulls you back not to punish you, but to preserve you. Sometimes He hides you to protect the message He placed inside you. Because premature exposure can kill a divine seed. And only the few understand the timing of God. His delays aren't denials. They're disguises. When He closes one door, it's because He's opening one that no man can shut. But you need eyes to see beyond appearances. Because what looks like rejection is often redirection. And what feels like a detour is usually divine positioning. People don't understand how you keep standing, how you're still calm in storms. It's because you're guided. It's because you've learned to read the signs. You've seen the number patterns, 111, 222, 777. And you didn't dismiss them. You felt the message behind the numbers. That's God. You've walked away from things you once begged for. That's growth. That's obedience. That's spiritual discernment. When something no longer aligns with the frequency of your calling, it starts to feel heavy. That's God warning you before the fallout. You've had to release people who were once your everything, not because you stopped loving them, but because your spirit started aching around them. That ache? That was divine resistance. God never lets peace live where His presence has exited. And you've noticed it. The shift. The way your circle has gotten smaller. The way your desires have changed. The way your spirit craves silence more than attention. That's the divine maturing you. Isolation isn't punishment. It's a sacred preparation. Because what's coming requires clarity, not chaos. It requires intuition, not popularity. It requires the ability to hear God, even when others are screaming over Him. You've been wondering why your prayers feel different lately, why your dreams have intensified, why you sense something you can't describe. It's because the message is close. The next divine download is almost here, and only the few will be ready. You've been hearing the call, and though the world may think you're too deep or too spiritual, the truth is, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're not behind. You're not crazy. You're awakened. And those who are spiritually guided always move differently because they follow something greater than logic. They follow the voice of God. This is your confirmation. That feeling you've been trying to shake. Don't. Lean into it, because something divine is about to be revealed, not in the external, but in your soul. Your spirit has been picking up on a message that your mind can't fully understand yet, but that's how God speaks. He speaks spirit to spirit, bypassing logic, igniting intuition, awakening destiny. Everything you've gone through has been aligning you with this moment. The setbacks, the delays, the heartbreaks, they weren't random. They were codes, lessons, each one embedded with meaning that only those spiritually guided can read. You were never meant to be like everyone else. Your path was never supposed to be easy. It was sacred, set apart. That's why your journey has been so different. You were being trained, not just to receive God's message, but to become the message. And now your presence carries power. People feel it before you speak. Environments shift when you walk in. It's not charisma. It's not charm. It's the divine essence flowing through you.